Um, so, Elaine, can you give me an idea when did you get the COVID-19 infection? How long ago was that? Was it early on in the pandemic or later on?
No, it was in December at around
Right,
Christmas week.
the second surge. Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
I've
And
been on the front line since March, delivering food parcels and in the thick of the pandemic, and not caught it once. And then on the 20th of December, it got me.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you were on the front line because obviously you did not have any sort of any of those vulnerabilities as risk factors go, and you were out there doing everything. Yeah. And was it, if you're okay about sharing your experience, I mean, were you okay about, in the sense that were you severely affected by it, or?
I was hospitalized for 9 days on a COVID ward eventually.
Right. And did you, Patricia's given me questions to ask, but I'm going off piste now. So, but did they know that you had oxygen imperfecta? They must have. Yeah.
They did, but it bore no relevance to what they needed to do to stop the COVID taking my really. So it was there, but it was not relevant to what they had to do to stop this COVID.
Right. Yeah. And 9 days sounds like quite a long time in hospital, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Presumably you didn't really enjoy it much.
Well, I tried my best to stay positive. I've always been grateful for a cup half full or just a cup.
Yeah.
And on that ward, it was distressing, and you did see some people and they didn't leave that ward. That was distressing, but I only had 8 days of watching that. The NHS had over a year of watching people on those wards. So I was one of the ones, and I found it fascinating to watch how things were developing, because the treatments that they used on me in December weren't available for those people in March, April, May 2020. So I don't think, well, the doctor said I wouldn't have been here had they not had the drugs that they had in December. So things moved on fast, and they save more people now. So that's good.
Yeah. Thanks. Shani, what about you? When did you get affected by COVID?
So I tested positive in June, and I thought I was asymptomatic. But looking back, I did have a sore throat, but what's a sore throat when you live with OI? I just thought nothing of it. And I work in an office and work for a large employer. And back in March, where we had just started to hear about COVID, but we didn't really know what it was or the implications, I actually started to shield a week before the lockdown. I just thought, this doesn't sound good at all. I live in London, there's a million more people, you know what, it's probably going to be my luck, I'll get it. So I have a really supportive employer, Virgin Media, so they were fine with that. So I just started to work from home a week before.
Yeah. So did you have problems shielding, or did you think it was a major sort of burden on you?
I thought, probably like many other people, would just be shielding for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was like a month, and it just, never ending. And to some degree, still am, sort of shielding. But I think because of having OI, because of spending lots of time in hospital, because you just get used to your own company, we are probably a group of people that are more resilient and a bit more experienced to understand what it feels like to shield. So it was a massive adjustment period, because I just never was at home prior to shielding. So I was out working at events, so that was a big adjustment period. But otherwise, it's fine. And actually, I'm able to make much healthier life choices now I'm shielding, because I've got more time. And I think it's definitely been a massive driver in the way that everyone's going to live and work going forward.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
develop
it's
new
still
ways.
tough. I'm not trying to sit here and say, oh, shielding's been a holiday. It's been tough. I was away from my family. You know, all that social stuff. Yeah, it's been tough.
Yeah. But it's interesting that you say that. In some ways, having osteogenesis imperfecta actually had prepared you for something like this in a way, because you had some ways of, you knew what your limits were, what you could cope with, and what you could do, and maybe you took advantage of that, which is.
And I think as well, when you live with OI, you really know your body.
Yeah.
You know, from the age of however young, you're like asked to describe your pain every day, aren't you, from a chart in hospital?
Yeah.
So, and we know when we've broken without needing an X-ray. So again, that being so in tune with your body, I think really helps when you're dealing with something like this too.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's just now that both of you have had your COVID sort of infection, how have you recovered from it? Are you? To me, you look back to normal, but are you sort of back to normal now? Do you think, Elaine?
No, I've got long COVID.
Okay. How's that affecting you?
Well, it's quite strange, because I don't know where my long COVID begins and my OI ends, because it's tiredness, which OI is part of, weakness in my upper body. I've got brain fog where sometimes I don't know whether traffic lights on red or green mean go, and it just is a really bizarre condition. My body temperature's 35 degrees all the time or below, and apparently hypothermia is 35 degrees. So it's affected my blood pressure. My blood pressure on going to the hospital was 62/32. It's low now, but not as low as that.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's one of. Shani, what about you?
Yeah, same as Elaine. So I also have long COVID, but for me, so I tested positive in June and then had a bunch of symptoms then, mainly extreme fatigue, brain fog, headaches, completely off my feet for a good month. And then it wasn't until December I then developed breathing problems and a tight chest. And I don't know, maybe it had something to do with the weather, but I didn't even correlate in December that my breathing problems would have anything to do with COVID. I thought I was okay now. And they were like, no, you've got long COVID. And I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, it's quite similar to Elaine. Like I'm a lot better. I'm not 100% as to what I was before. And I think now it's my chest and breathing are much better, but that's after really pushing to see physios. My GP is so like not clued on at all, not even about OI. So I really had to push for that through my consultant. Love my GP, but just really had to push for that. But no, again, like lots of brain fog. Can't work as much as I could before. I know the word that I want to say, but I can't sometimes think of it. It's really weird stuff. And I loved what Elaine said. Sometimes you don't know where the OI stops and the long COVID begins. It just kind of all mesh into one.
And there's so many other things going on. Just the experience of being in hospital for 8 days or 9 days, and what you went through, Elaine, I think is a lot for anybody to. And I think that itself has effects. And I think that there's so many things going on at the moment. Obviously, I think there's quite a lot of work going on in long COVID, and I think we'll have long COVID specific clinics and things, which are being set up. So I think that will, but at the moment, I'm not completely sure as to how much support you're getting for. If you say to somebody you've got long COVID, Shani, does that have an effect on your work? I mean, have people been more sympathetic or anything like that at all, or how's that happening?
I tend to find if someone has had COVID themselves or have long COVID, then they completely get it. If you're speaking to someone and they haven't, and perhaps they don't know anybody else who's had COVID, then they don't really get it. Or, there's still some people that don't believe it's real. So there's all of that to manage, isn't there? it was really hard at first because it's like, is this real? And it just felt like no one was taking long COVID seriously. And like, I know loads of people with long COVID that don't have any underlying conditions. So it's hard. And I think for me especially, I'm always working, like always working. And I know now after planning time to rest, which I've never really done before. So because if I don't, then I know I'm going to be out again, and I don't want to be off work and stuff, so.
I mean, Elaine, what about yourself? I mean, is it difficult or easy for you to explain to people that you've got long COVID?
It is really difficult, but I've joined a group of people locally who've got long COVID, and we've been, sharing our good days and bad days and supporting each other. And the way that someone described it to me is that it's the spoon theory. And when you get up each morning, you have 6 spoons, and you might need to use 2 to get out of bed and get dressed. But you might have 1 spoon on one day, and you may not use all your spoons one day, but you may use all your spoons in a morning, just go into the car, drive into work, and you may do a couple of hours of work and then have to stop because it just absolutely knocks you for 6. And some days are better than others, but you just have to really manage your day and your time and be very bodily aware. And I think having OI has been a benefit because we do know our bodies, like Shani said, we do know ourselves very, very well physically, and it has helped that.
Okay, there are some questions coming through, but we'll take them later on in the end. Just to ask you one more question, I guess we need to move on to the last bit of the COVID thing, which is about vaccines. I'm presuming that you both had your jabs now, and is that right?
I've had my first one in March. I've got my second one in June, and I don't mind saying I've had the AstraZeneca one. It wasn't a choice; it was just the one that was there. So hope that will help.
I've had my first dose, and I've got my second one next week. And again, like Elaine, wasn't a choice, but I just got given Pfizer, and I was okay. I didn't have any side effects or anything.
Oh, you didn't get any side effects at all. That's quite impressive because I had quite a bit of fever and things, and it was as the book said, it was only for 48 hours, and I was fine after that.
Can I just also share as well? I think the biggest thing that I've learned through having long COVID is how grateful I am to have a diagnosis for OI, because with long COVID, you're living with a condition that still half the population doesn't even believe is real. When you try and get support, it's not really set up or there yet. I know there's some long COVID clinics, but still, they're new, aren't they? They're still being figured out. And the one thing that this has made me really feel is immense gratitude, and I really feel for people that live with rare conditions that won't ever get a diagnosis as well. And I've never reflected on that before in that way. So it's funny, isn't it? What it makes you think about, and I'm just very grateful for having a diagnosis for OI, knowing where I can go to help the Brittle Bone Society. It's just opened up a whole new world. It means that much to have a diagnosis.